Gyan means knowing, witnessing, and so on. And we have got these 4 chambers, and they are interrelated to each other. Now, for each of them, we used spaces, space-times actually, and they are labeled as R, I, J, K. So this is in real numbers, and these 3 are in imaginary numbers. And when we consider any higher dimensional space, we have a severe problem, because our human mind cannot imagine more than 3 dimensions. With 4 dimensions we have problems already. But with 16 dimensions it's not possible, and we have to consider that our human mind is a result of evolution. And it was never meant in evolution to understand such higher dimensional spaces. Mostly we have to secure our survival. And for survival it is simply not necessary. But when we are in a contemplative mood, and when we want to understand the world in which we are living in, then we come on that issue. And then we want to understand something which our mind is actually not really made for. So how to overcome that problem? It is done by making proper slices. We have to accept the fact that we have only a 3-dimensional capacity of imagination. And if we include a sense of movie, an internal movie, then we can add into the movie, we will see the time dimension, but that's the limit of our capacity mentally. But we have to see that if we have a higher dimensional body, we can make many different slices to it. And each slice will give a different shape. And with some fantasy and some talent and imagination, it is possible to put together several of these slices. And in that you get an idea how the higher dimensional body will look like. But that is a very rough idea. The main thing is that you can handle high dimensional bodies by making slices. And each slice will have a different shape. So imagine you have a space which is filled with blue and green balls, like this one. Now this is only one slice, but imagine it is the whole space is filled like that. Imagine that. And now you make a slice in this way, and then you will see only blue balls. And if you make a different slice parallel to this one, you will see only green. And depending on the slice which you make, you will see different things. So the same happens here. If you make a slice to such a complex and high-dimensional world, which shows you only the real world, then you will see only the real world. If you make another slice, then you will see only the imaginary, only the mental, only the inner, let us say the psychic world. And this is not really complementary. It is, basically it is all one in one, but it is different because the limits of our imagination. So to say, these are different slices of a hyper-dimensional reality. So the other trick when we deal with high-dimensional spaces and when we use quaternion numbers is how to operate and how to calculate in such high-dimensional spaces. Of course, usually we don't know how to do it, and in my school time it was also never taught. Nevertheless, it is as long as 1843 that Sir William Hamilton discovered how to do that calculation. He is the one who struggled hard for more than 10 years how to calculate quaternion numbers. And in a flash of genius, when he walked to his institute and he crossed a bridge in Dublin, he got an insight to understand how it is done, how the multiplication of quaternion numbers has to be done. And in commemoration of that incident, the Dubliners have put a stone plate on that very bridge, which gives testimony of that remarkable incident. And it says that in a flash of genius, he understood, after a long, long struggle, that the formula for the multiplication is this one. And this is a very simple thing, but imagine it took him 10 years to come to that. For us nowadays it looks simple, but at his time it was very, very difficult. I squared gives -1. That is simple. And if you make the root on both the sides, you get the root of I squared is I, and the root of -1, that's I. That's the definition of I. I is the square root of -1. J square and K square, these are the labels which are used in the quaternion. They behave as I does. Also, squaring it also gives -1. That's also simple. But complicated is the last one, means that I, J, K multiplied all the three, again gives -1. And of course, in between, the whole table of multiplication has been worked out, not only these 4 cases. And this is the table. If you multiply any of these 3 labels with any of the other ones, you get these results. So it's not necessary now to understand this and to go deeply into it. I just want to say that we are using here, of course, the simplest case is minus I multiplied by I is 1. That is the simplest case. But we use also these two. J multiplied with K gives I, and K multiplied with I gives J. And these 2 transformations are necessary for what we will see just in a few minutes, and I will try to do it as fast as possible. I cannot do it so fast that it becomes ridiculous, but I will try to do it as fast so that you will not feel bored and you will not leave the room. Actually, I wish that I will not chase anyone out of the room. I will try hard not to become too abstract. But what we are talking about is actually a revolution in thought. That revolution was put in progress by Pirasaka, and we continue it. And you can't get a revolution in the history of mind just by fun. You can't get it for free. You have to take it serious, you have to go a little bit in it. You don't have to understand it at once, but please make an effort. And I hope that I will not compel anyone to go out of the room. So if it is too hard, please interrupt me and say stop, it's enough. So I try to be as fast as possible. So again, we are starting with 4 space-times. This is the space-time opened by real numbers, and these are the space-times opened by imaginary numbers of 3 categories. For the first sequence, we will consider a transformation from this to this space. This is an old space-time, and this is an old space-time, and we need a transformation from here to there. If we don't have this transformation, then these space-times will just exist side by side, and they don't have any interference with each other. This was sufficiently considered in philosophy, namely under the topic whether God, if he exists, takes part in the development of the world. Whether he has interest, whether he has mercy with us on earth, or whether he has turned his face away and has lost interest in this material world. This was a question which moved very much. For example, in the Western Hemisphere, I know some names which might not be familiar to you, but you might know some thinkers of the Eastern Hemisphere who also considered that fact, that sometimes natural calamities or wars take such an ugly and devastating shape that we, as an observer, think that how the God or the gods can allow such things to happen. And then the consequence might be that, yes, if he happens, he has completely lost interest in this. Otherwise, how can he allow? How can he be so merciless to allow this to happen? This, in Germany, we had Leibniz. He is the one who wrote the monadology, which is similar to the Microvita science, monadology. And he was very much engaged in this idea, whether God has interest or not, whether he has turned his face away or whether he is still interested and involved in our worldly affairs. Now here we don't say that he has lost any interest. Rather, we say that there is a constant involvement of this godly sphere, this sphere of where everything is witnessed and where everything is reflected and known, to the other sphere where the I-ness is doing something. There is a relation, and that relation needs some transformation from here to there. So how can we imagine such a transformation? Such transformations, we use matrices, and in such matrices we have one element. This is an imaginary entity in the K-space, and we have an operator. This is an operator which is multiplied in this way. And as a result, this is the process of multiplication. In the result, we get a reduced state. Now here we get a first answer to what it means to come from the non-reduced to the reduced. The meaning is that in the non-reduced state, it is unified. And in the reduced state, it becomes polarized. What is one before becomes two in the process of reduction. And these two, which are the result of that multiplication, the formal process of a matrix multiplication, these two, they are polarity to each other. They are polar to each other. They are opposites to each other. It is like positron and electron, or like two photons moving in 180 degrees apart from each other, or like any other polarity. If you go on our human level, you might even say that the polarity of male and female is also a result of social reduction. And in the original state, the male and the female is one entity, and due to the influence of reduction, it polarizes into two separate entities which antagonize or complement each other according to circumstances. So this is the operator, and we will come to these operators again and again because they have different shapes, different labels, and they become in the end the important and interesting part. I will give you also a simple comparison at how we can compare this scheme with biochemistry. So in the next phase, we make a transformation from this space, from the Pitagoras space, to the zeta. It is a simple matrix multiplication, but here this has to be different. The operator has to be quite different. We use this matrix is the same one like in the last one, but it is multiplied with a very different operator, and we get this product. And this product is again, it is an imaginary entity in the I space. And this is again used in the next one. Now we make a transformation from the chitta to the Annamaya kosha. So the result of the last multiplication, it is this one, and it is to be multiplied with this operator. It is again a very different operator. And this multiplication gives the result. And if you substitute certain items in these variables, you get two virtual photons. And if again you change the operator, again the operator is a different one, you get one photon. So that is the sequence. You make a transformation from the Gyan Purush to the Krita Purush, from the Krita Purush to the Chitta, from the Chitta to the Annamaya kosha. And mathematically I have shown how to do it. The basis of this is the multiplication table which we have seen. If you multiply I with I, you get a real number, -1. And if you multiply I with k, you get an imaginary number, and so on. This is, I think it is understandable. And at the end of that process, you get, for example, a real photon. What you get depends what you substitute. If you substitute something different, you get something. This is a general formula, very general. So, now, in order, what we need is that what we see has to be displayed on our mental plate. We see it and it is received on the mental plate. So it is not enough to send photons there, the photons also have to come back. And when they are reflected from the object, then they receive the mental plate and it is said to be recognized by the mind. So now we have two arrows. Before we had only one arrow, this, or from K to J, from J to I, from I to R. Now we have the arrow in the reverse direction, and the multiplications which are necessary to perform the reverse transformations, they are in detail presented in the latest book. I thought that I have stressed your patience enough, and it's not necessary to show all the reverse multiplications also. They are similar, but of course you have to use different operators. The operator has to be adjusted, and you have to have the skill to adjust your operator to perform what you need. But it's not a very big task. It is more difficult to find ways how such matrices can be synchronized among each other. And also for that, a solution is presented in this book. But I just refer to it here, and it's not necessary to elaborate in details. Now, at the end, without going to the details, at the end we came in that book to the result that it needs 4 matrices as operators to perform what we need. I mean, what we need is a transformation into the other space and back again. And eventually we have to consider that energy also has to be transformed. Not only the form, but also the energy has to be brought from one to the other. So here we need 4 matrices to perform this. And to make it more acceptable, less abstract and mathematical, I was making this model, and it is made of golden and silver balls. And the silver balls, they represent simply the grid, but the golden balls represent the active sites of these matrices. And on the upper surface, you have the matrix, the operator matrix, which performs the transformation in the one direction, and on the lower surface, it does the same on the other direction. So that one was again simplified, and here we have simply 32 golden balls, means 32 active sites of matrices, and they are depicted here. These are the matrices which are necessary here to go from the I space to the R space. Propensities are our sentiments and emotions. And they have been listed in yogic textbooks. And we will come to the propensities in detail in the afternoon. But what is important here is that these microvita, which are conceived as those toroid bodies, which have matrices on the upper and the lower side, and these matrices perform as a model. How it is done in reality, we don't know, but we have a model which describes exactly that which is described in the book. And before, we could take it only as given. Vyasaka had said that it is like that, and we either had to eat it or refuse it. Now we have a model which explains how this can be done. The model says that these matrix transformations allow an interaction between these chambers, and this interaction, if it is done like this, leads as a result to control. And what is control? The propensities in our own life. Now this is really interesting and challenging, and I hope that this message goes here in the campus. Everybody, each of us has propensities, and they are usually harmful. We might get jealous, we might get possessive, we might get angry, we might get fearful, we might get hopeless. These are all propensities, and it is a question of every human being, old and young, how to control these propensities, how to bring them into, so that we can have a smooth life, and we are not shaken and irritated by these sentiments and emotions. Usually we say, okay, we have a free will, and by free will we can handle it. But when you look to reality, you will see, and in a daily medical practice, it is an experience which a doctor has many times a day, that free will doesn't help much to bring these things under control. People try it. They might be successful for a few hours, eventually for a few days, sometimes only a few minutes, and then the whole thing starts again and again and again, and they go in circles. As it was mentioned before, if you go with one row only, you go in circles. So here we get a message that Microvita not only relate, they also control such propensities. So this is, I think, very useful for everyone to know how that is to be understood. And we will do it in the afternoon, definitely. Now, in the end, I will give you a joke. You have done a very good job to stay with me, to stay with that complicated and complex thing, to listen to the abstract issues which I told you. Now you deserve a joke. There's a joke on the quantum zero effect. And it illustrates that what is true in the micro world, what is true in the quantum world, is of course not true in the macro world, in the world which we see around us. But sometimes we feel that the time stretches when we watch something, when we wait for something. So we are standing on the stove and we wait that the water should cook. And it seems to be endless until it cooks. But if we go out of the room and do something else, we will come too late because it is already cooking. So time is running sometimes very fast and sometimes very slow, but that is because of our experience. That's the real time when we measure it by a device is the same, no doubt. And the joke lives with that confusion of the experience and the real time. But in the quantum world, it is not like that. You can measure the time as precise as you like. And if you watch the object, which has to be a quantum object, the time until it changes will be longer, which is known as a quantum zero effect. So, this picture I have shown in the beginning. So we have completed one circle. Everybody who wants to go deeper into the issues, here are our three main websites where you can read quite a lot. And it is updated, and also this event will be displayed on these websites. So I welcome you to visit these addresses, and we would also very much like to see participants and to have active interest and participation in our magnetic research.